Welcome to the Micromobility podcast. And today we have Martin Lefrancq from Brussels Mobility. He's one of the few people that I know from the beginning when I got into this industry, and one of the few people that are very passionate about what he's doing. And so, welcome to the show, Martin.
Thank you very much, Prabin. Really, really happy to be here.
Great. So, for people who don't know you, can you give a quick intro about who you are, what your role is within Brussels Mobility?
All right, yeah. So my name is Martin Lefrancq, as you said. I work for Brussels Mobility, which is the regional transport agency for the Brussels capital region. So it's we're both a city and a region. I work and I represent for the regional level, and I've been working since 2018 as the new mobility policy advisor for Brussels Mobility. But I've been working for the agency since 2007 already, but a
Wow.
completely different job. I used to be involved in urban lighting at the time. But
Got
now,
it.
now it's new mobility services, so shared mobility, mobility as a service, autonomous driving as well, these sort of things.
18 years is a very, very long time.
Yes, indeed.
Uh, um, like I said in the intro, you're one of the few people that I know who are very passionate and so invested in this cause, for this cause. So, why mobility? Why micromobility in specific for you?
Well, it's hard not to be fascinated and passionate about this. It's a really interesting topic. Once I always say that once you start working in like mobility and transport planning in general, it's hard to get away from it because it's just something that's so important for everyday people's lives, basically. But like how I got there is very organic. I didn't realize how fascinated I was by cities until I started working for it. Like transport planning and city management is absolutely fascinating because it's completely complex, very complex, and you have a real impact in everyday life. So like it's very satisfying, and in these new mobility services, you actually learn every day. So that's also a plus, of course. I never get
Yeah,
bored. It's really really cool job.
perfect. Do you take the bike to work, or what's your mode of transport to work when you
Uh,
go to
uh,
work?
since I have an e-bike, so
Okay,
it's been a few years already. I never doubt and hesitate anymore. I grab my bike and I go
always
to
bike.
work. Yeah,
Okay,
always bike. Sometimes shared, of course, but
okay.
bike is the way to go.
Got it. So if you look at the audience, it's a mix of stakeholders from the industry, operators, investors, city officials. So the goal for our chat today is to go through what's happening in Brussels, giving a perspective from a city official's point of view about the end industry, right? So hopefully at the end of the session, everyone that's listening would learn much more from what it is from a city's perspective, because you're one of the first ones that we're bringing in from a city point of view in this new series, right?
Excellent.
With that, let's go back to 2017-18. I remember that very, very well. It was kind of the time when the entire micromobility boom happened, fueled by shared micromobility, of course, and a lot of VC funding. Brussels was one of the first cities that embraced kind of the new mobility, right? If you look at Lime or Bird or one of the larger ones, even Voi, Tier, anybody that raised cash,
Mhm.
for them, the first city that they were looking at was Brussels because it was so easy to come here and launch their services, right? Even Dot, I remember that their very first service was Brussels, very first city was Brussels. Can you paint a picture of what was going on then? Why Brussels was kind of the top destination for all the operators across the world?
Yeah, of course. So I started in this position and started work on shared mobility and shared micromobility around mid 2018. But the history of micromobility in Brussels started earlier than that. In 2017, you had these Chinese muscular bikes, shared muscular bikes, spreading bikes all around Europe and in many, many cities. So that was in 2017. We had that as well. and
Mhm.
that like the O bikes or Gobi bikes at the time. And that was the starting point. That ignites the idea at the political level, the government level, to start. Okay, if we have that so many bikes and so many vehicles flooding the streets in Brussels, it's going to hard to track. We need a regulatory framework. So at the time, it was very innovative. Indeed, as you said, I think we were one of the first cities, if not the first city, to have like an official law kind of giving a framework for the services. But with a few with a few years back, maybe we were even a little too early because we didn't know exactly how to do it. But after that, so I arrived at this position when this regulatory framework was operational, and I got in touch with all providers at the time to understand like and explain them how they could get a permit, a license, which is the framework that we have in Brussels. It's license
Mhm.
based, but it was very easy to get one. You
Okay.
just needed to be like okay on a few parameters, criterias, and then you had the permit, which was renewable, like uh, easily, like automatically renewable, no limits, no caps in terms of vehicles, no caps in terms of licenses or providers. So it was good to have a regulatory framework. Maybe it was a bit too light.
Mhm.
But I like to say, like, history of micromobility in Brussels is very important, and we had
Yeah.
local players at the time, also in 2017, 2018, like Scooty
Mm.
and Billy Bikes, which I believe, and I'd like to have some feedback on that, like double check. I believe is the first free floating e-bike provider in the world at the
Okay.
time.
Mhm.
So like there was some innovation in good like small
So, was it a intentional decision then to say, anybody that's applying, if they fit a certain criteria, we'll let them in, or was it part of an experiment saying that, hey, let's let as many operators in, let's learn how this goes, and then set some rules. What is the thinking behind it? There has to be some rationale, right, about allowing all users, sorry, all operators from to come in.
Well, I don't know precisely because I wasn't actually there when the work on the regulatory framework, the first one was done. But I know like it was the initiative of Minister Smet, Pascal Smet at the time. I know he
Yep.
was also like he spoke at some micromobility events in the past few years. So yeah, at the time he really saw like the threat that it was going to be, and handling bankruptcy of Gobi bikes and O bikes leaving their bikes behind, like really ignited the idea that something should be done. But at the time, I think it was also kind of wise and clever not to go too hard on regulations. They wanted to do something lighter to see how things would go.
Yep.
But you have to understand, like, if you have an ordinance or law getting, operational in 2018, it requires a few months of work ahead of that, like almost a year. So the whole process and the thought process started very, very early on. And I think it was really hard to imagine what shared micromobility would become and how much, capital would be invested in
Yeah.
these some companies and have so many companies. It was hard to anticipate that at the time.
Okay.
So it was like there's a lot of merits of having done that. It was hard to be like really on target, on point without
Yeah.
knowing what was going to happen after that, especially
Correct.
like COVID and etc.
Yeah. Do you have some numbers from then? Was it like eight, nine operators? If you look at the scooter share companies and also e-bike share companies, was it like eight, nine?
Like the most we had simultaneously was in
Hmm.
I believe in 2022. It
Okay.
was 9 providers
Wow.
with 25,000 scooters at the point. We don't have the precise data because
Yeah.
all operators wasn't sharing their data at the time.
Yeah.
But we estimated around 25,000 scooters. That's not counting the e-bikes,
Yeah.
but they were very little at the time.
Okay. But
Very
if you
little.
if you count the Villo bikes and everything, probably that's like more than 30,000 vehicles,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
30,000 vehicles. Yeah,
Okay.
that was too much. That was too much. That was
True.
the reason why we started working on like already a revision of the regulatory framework, which ended in 2023, and
Yeah.
the new framework and new licenses with caps on vehicles, caps on providers.
Got it. So right after the 2017-18 times, I mean, we had COVID after that. So we had this micromobility boom, and then we had COVID. One of the things that happened during that time is every city started investing into bike lanes, right? Because people didn't want to get in a metro or a bus, be in a confined space, and it in a way accelerated micromobility. If you remember 2017-18 times, one of the biggest things from that operators would say is that, hey, we don't have enough bike lanes. If we have enough bike lanes, this would be a massive industry, right? But the code actually accelerated that. Every city, if you look at the number of bike lanes in terms of kilometers, it went up, right? Brussels is not an exception. um, how was that phase like? You had bike lanes, and then when you had operators, some of them they perished because of COVID, but some of them that stayed. Um, how did that look like? You also had a major mode shift from public transit to bikes, right? Can you tell us how that went?
Well, yeah, it's weird to say, but I almost missed some part of the era
Okay.
because it was quite exciting at the time.
Yeah.
Of course, I wouldn't like to stay home all the time
Yeah.
like back then. But in terms of at the professional level, it was quite interesting because you had this, as you said, momentum and exciting times, like saying, "Wow." From the city level, fit city perspective, there's an opportunity, an amazing opportunity to like help this light vehicles and bike
Yeah.
micromobility boom. So we started working on indeed on these like COVID lanes.
Yeah.
And we built in a few months' time. We built close to 40 kilometers bike lanes, if I remember correctly,
Mhm.
which are now they remain there, but like they're built in a more durable way
Yeah.
than just COVID lanes. But it definitely helped, and you can see as like in many other cities, you have since 2020, 2021, there was a big boom.
Yeah.
Regarding shared micromobility in the providers, indeed, a few decided to leave the market in Brussels during the hard COVID period, but some stayed, and actually there was kind of an interesting momentum and collaboration with them, providing free services to healthcare and something like that. So interesting ideas, and I think it helps also from a cultural standpoint in Brussels. It helped people in Brussels saying, okay, but this is an interesting service.
Yeah.
It has a right to and a relevance to stay in the urban mobility landscape in Brussels. I think it helped for the few next few years, and since then, like there's growth in terms of usage of shared micromobility that's significant, and
Yeah.
and now you can really say that it's part of everyday life. Like at some point in the past few months, we had close to 100,000 trips made by share mobility services, and
Yeah.
that's 85, 90,000 made by shared micromobility in one day. I mean, it's significant. It's an
Yeah.
important part of transport offer here in Brussels.
True. And probably it also was uh, kind of an example, not just in Brussels, across other cities as well, that uh, you know, uh, shared micromobility actually takes some part of the peak demand away from public transport, because you know how it is in the mornings and evenings, especially if you go to Paris. I mean, it's very hard to get in the metro and take a trip, right? But shared
Absolutely.
mobility is like taking that peak demand off a bit, right? Do you think there's active dialogue between public transport and shared micromobility, or generally, micromobility as such, to say, hey, I mean, how do you manage this? Because there's peak demand for public transport, we cannot handle it. After above a certain level, can shared micromobility take this demand, and how do we facilitate this? Is that a conversation that's happening?
Well, it's happening, but very slowly. I mean, we're
Yeah.
supposed to be like all sustainable transport providers, hand in hand, and thinking together to build the future of transport. It's supposed to be like that. It's not that like that yet, but there are some interesting progress. specifically thanks to the Floya MaaS
Yeah.
application, like the regional Brussels MaaS application, which is called Floya, which is being led. The project is being led by Stib MIVB, which is the public transport operator in Brussels. And shared micromobility providers are integrated in the app. And there's been interesting dialogue and understanding of how the dynamics work when it comes to mobility. It's true that it can be considered competition. If you watch the day we had 100,000 trips made by share mobility, we had like 7,000 trips being done simultaneously at peak rush hour at night.
Hmm.
So you could consider indeed that it was competition to public transport. But we
Yeah.
understand how um, users behave. You understand that once they get more multimodal, eventually they actually use more public transport.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's not a competition. It's actually working together. The
Okay.
goal is to get more multimodal. It's not being like get everyone on public transport all of the time or everyone on a bike all of the time. That's not the point. It
Yeah.
doesn't work like that. So I think there's a way forward and an interesting perspective when it comes to public transport and private shared mobility providers working together.
Got
I
it.
have hope.
Absolutely. But do you think, so if you look at public transport network or investment in cities, it's a massive investment, right? So if you take Paris, Paris is a very good example, right? So if you take public transport, it's jam packed, right? Whenever I go to Paris, I mean, at least the last few times, I never take the public transport. I'm always on a bike, on a shared bike, right? It's much more easier, right? Do you think for public transport operators, it reduces their future investment because if a part of the demand can be taken over by shared micromobility or micromobility vehicles, do you think that would isn't it beneficial for public transport authorities that they don't have to make massive infrastructure investments looking into the future, rather support another mode of transport?
Well, it can definitely be a debate about that. To public transport defense, like there's no way we can reach that kind of capacity. Like
Yeah.
tram and subway have massive, massive capacity. So we still have to have public transport as really the backbone of the transport system in Brussels.
Yeah.
But indeed, in some situations, and in the current, budget crisis that we're going through, um, it raises questions on investment in public transport. Like for the moment, there's a lot of debate happening on the construction of a new subway line, Metro 3, Subway
Mm.
3, which is like doing big infrastructure project today. You're gonna have you know surprises and bad
Yeah.
surprises in terms of budget, in terms of planning. So we still don't know when we're going to have that subway and how much it's going to cost eventually. So in that kind of perspective, there is indeed a relevant debate and discussion to be had, whether how we can work with private providers and how they can complement and help in some situations. I think, yeah, the more the more options you have, the more services you have, the better for the citizen it is. You can
Yeah.
combine these solutions depending on the use case, on what you have to do on everyday life. Again, the goal is not to have everyone all of the time on public transport. It's to
Yeah.
have options and combinations.
Absolutely. Um, so I've lived in different cities. I used to live in Bangalore. Completely congested. If you get on a car, so just for you to know, when I used to take a car to my workplace there, I think it's like about 10 kilometers. I used to be in the car for like 1.5 to 2 hours, right, one way. Right. So
That's
that's
crazy.
one travel in the morning, one travel in the evening, right? You don't have so you can be on a moped or a bike, but then pollution and all that, and then bus absolutely jam packed, right? So if you want to have a comfortable trip, it's a car or a shared cab that you have to take, but then you know it's 1.5 to 2 hours that you spend in the traffic, right?
That's crazy.
If you go to many other cities, they're all congested. But how do you see when people write about Brussels, saying that Brussels is car choked? Just showing a picture from the popular picture, right next to the European Parliament. There's a road, there's a bridge, and it's so easy to take a picture and say, hey, it is congested. But my personal belief, I mean, I live in Brussels for like about 11 years, and if you look at the traffic there, it's smooth flowing traffic. You never have a situation where it's like absolutely congested for like a couple of hours, right? So how do you feel? Do you think that Brussels is car choked? Do you think for example, TomTom, they have this traffic index, and they have like Brussels as one of the most congested cities in the world. How do you view this from a because you have the entire view of what's happening in Brussels? How do you see that?
Well, I was born and raised here. I
Yeah.
love my city, but as always, when you live in a city, you're more critical than anyone else.
Mhm.
So I feel it's still very much car oriented, but there's so
Yeah.
much progress having been done in the past, 10, 15 years that it's much better now than it was before.
Yeah.
Um, it used to be completely, the car choked, as you said,
Mhm.
and still, like when I ride my bike back from work to home, I ride around the inner ring, like a small
Yeah.
ring that we call in the city. We have now amazing bike infrastructure there, so that's why I use that path. But it's along like very important car axis, and it's
Yeah.
still like all of the time. It's basically
Mhm.
bumper against bumper,
Yeah.
and it's very present. But
Mhm.
like things are getting so much better than before. So there's
Yeah.
progress, and it takes time. I mean, a city, if you want to change a city, we're talking about tens of years, decades to actually reach a scale that is relevant. Like the change that happened in Paris
Yeah.
is almost an anomaly because how fast it went.
Exactly.
I know it should be an example, but not a realistic example in terms of time frame because
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
happened really really fast. It's almost
Yeah.
impossible to reach. And actually, so what an important thing to realize is that so Brussels is basically 15 kilometers across and 1.2 million inhabitants. Paris is smaller than that.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
city of Paris is smaller than Brussels. So again, a question of scale is important to have in mind when it comes to public space
Yeah.
change.
Got it. Yeah, Paris, London. It's fascinating. I mean, I was in Paris recently. Uh, funnily enough, with the founder of Jump,
Okay.
Ryan, and we took a Lime bike, and we were like exploring Paris, and it's fascinating. He was fascinated. He was like, this is exactly what I would have wanted when I was building Jump,
Yeah.
but now Jump is owned by Lime, and Lime is reaping rewards both in Paris and London for that. Right. It's
Yeah. It's
fascinating, and I think it
fascinating.
sets an
Absolutely.
yeah, it sets an example for every city, right?
It's very inspiring. Very inspiring.
Yeah,
Yes, indeed. Like a change in less than 10 years, basically, is incredible.
absolutely, absolutely. And talking about change, so Brussels city changed in a massive way in the last like 10 years. I've been living here for 11 years, and I used to go to city center often
Hmm.
because Brussels is small, and that's exactly where you go in the weekends. So and at some point, the entire the heart of the city was like kind of like the entire infrastructure was like ripped out. There was so much construction going on, and there was we all know that there's something coming up, a pedestrian zone of sorts. There was so much backlash from businesses saying that, hey, I mean, that's going to kill our business, right? And finally, last couple of years, I think 2 years, 3 years ago, the entire zone opened, and probably it's the largest pedestrian zone in Europe, at least as far as I know. And it's a fascinating change. I love going to the center and spending time, and that's the same for a lot of folks living in the city, right? The entire core of Brussels completely transformed. Can you talk about this? Because it's a bold bet. It's not easy to do. I don't think any city can easily pull this off. How did you do this? And can you tell us about what that is for audience who don't know? Tell us what that is, and then also how this played out.
Yeah, of course. Well, to be completely precise and accurate, it's the city of Brussels that led that change in the city center. So we are a region, 19 municipalities inside, and the city of Brussels is one of them, the largest and the most central one. And they led that change for the pedestrian zone in the city center near the Grand Place, so very the heart of the city. And it's funny. I really remember when I was much younger, a kid, an adolescent. Like the meeting point was on the Bourse, on the steps of in
Yeah.
front of the Bourse, and it was a highway back then in the city center, which was crazy when you think about it. And I think it was around 2011, 2012 that there were manifestations. It was called Picnic the Streets.
Mhm.
So it came from civil society saying that you know, we can't stand it anymore. We don't want to see cars in the city center. We don't want it to have polluted air.
Yeah.
We want to have a zone where it's okay to walk, to play for kids, etc. So that was well, that was a long time ago. Still remember it. So 2012, I think. But that's really started to change. And the mayor of the city of Brussels then, had a project and an idea to create this pedestrian zone,
Mhm.
and it took indeed close to 10 years to complete it.
Yeah.
And now when you go back there, it's changed a lot. And it's hard to like. It's really hard to say it was better before. It's impossible
Yeah.
to say on like real, arguments and etc. But change will always create backlash. Like
Yeah.
it's just, it's better now for sure, but there are things that could have been done better. Maybe it lasted really long for the renovation work and refurbishment. Indeed, as you said, businesses changed,
Yeah.
so people lost their job and their businesses, but other businesses took place. In general, it's a very lively place in the city
Yeah.
center. Much more than before when we had all these cars and sometimes uh, traffic jams in the heart of the capital of Europe. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It used to be through traffic, right? I mean, there was a road that was carrying traffic, which was not supposed to be for the city core, but then it's just through traffic, right?
absolutely. But it was
Yeah.
like it was the vision that in the 60s and 70s I wasn't there at the time. But like a modernist approach, the car
Yeah.
will change. Like it's the future. We should be able to reach everything with the car. And if you put yourself back then, it kind of made sense, I guess. And at the time, there was no budget crisis, so and much less process in terms of getting permits to create these works. So
Yeah.
things went really fast at the time, and they built a lot of infrastructure in cities for cars. And now it's harder to go back from there than it was at the time
True.
to create those infrastructure.
Yeah, for listeners who would visit Brussels, you definitely have to go and check this pedestrian zone. It's fascinating. In the evenings, it's a happening place where it used to be car traffic many years ago, but now it's food trucks. There's so much happening, right? And it's I really enjoy walking through from Debruck here and through that area.
That's
Um,
awesome. It's nice to hear.
um, what was the backlash like, and how was that managed? Because we now we know that things are better. It's a good place for Brussels residents to go and have a good time. But of course, there was a lot of backlash. There was businesses that went bankrupt even or had to shut their doors. How did the city manage that backlash?
Well, to the credit of the mayor of the city of Brussels at the time, like he stayed strong on his position. There was
Mhm.
a lot of backlash from local businesses and from shop owners, etc., saying that it would kill businesses. But he stayed strong with his vision, and he went through. And I think there's not one truth about the impact of pedestrian zones and this kind of
Yeah,
change for city or shop owners or businesses. Like there are a lot of studies proving that there's more consumers and more spending in shops when you turn into pedestrians. But if you listen to shop owners, they're saying something different.
mhm,
But um, we have to be witness of what's going on, and there are still many shops and new shops, etc.,
yeah,
happening in the city center. So that there's probably different impacts on different kind of shops, etc. But so at the time, it was more the city of Brussels that had some backlash on the pedestrian zone. But in
Yeah.
general, I can talk maybe with more experience on the sustainable urban mobility plan,
Mhm.
which is called Good Move here in Brussels, where we have a vision basically to the horizon of 2030. We want to have a bit less car usage and way more of anything else. We want people to be as
Yeah.
multimodal as possible. And this plan is also a very concrete action plan with 50 actions on public space refurbishment, good partnership, good governance. There's a lot of different type of actions, and we had elections last year.
Mhm.
And during the campaign, it was really, you know, a strong point of discussion, like the mobility and transport vision. And the backlash that you have basically is, what about my freedom? What
Mhm.
about my freedom to use the mode of transport that I want to use?
Yeah.
And of course, we are kind of biased. We see the point of having as many options as possible in terms of transport services and transport options. And the more options you have, the more freedom that you have.
Yeah.
But from user of their own car, from their perspective, as long as you make space for something else, you attack their own freedom to use their car. So that was
Mhm.
basically, I think, the core argument of this backlash of this debate.
Yeah.
And so I'm not working at the political level. I'm working for the administration, but
Mhm.
I believe there's been some hard discussions, difficult decisions to be made at the time. Yeah,
Got it.
but interesting. A very much ongoing debate on that topic.
Yeah. Something that I went through, a personal transformation that I went through, is that when I was living in Bangalore, car was my one of the important modes. Um, so in Bangalore, there used to be this Volvo buses. These are like air conditioned buses that came that the city launched, and when that was launched, I kind of like shifted to that, right?
Okay.
Um, and then, when that became congested, I was back to car, right? And then the moment I moved to Brussels, my mode of transport completely changed. I'm not sticking to cars. When I'm in the city center, I'm either on a bike or public transport. Public transport is like really great in Brussels, right? So, what I strongly believe is that if you give people enough choices, right?
Hmm.
I don't. I'm not saying the car can be completely eliminated, but then people do shift modes from cars to other modes. Like similar to Paris. I was telling you. I think even if you go to Paris, I don't think you're going to take a taxi or a cab or a car. You're not going to drive a car. You will take a bike, right? And another example is like for people going from Brussels to Paris, I don't think anybody's driving to Paris anymore, right? With
I
Thales,
hope not. I hope
right?
not.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
sometimes it's a bit expensive to go with the train, but it's so efficient
Yeah.
that it
So
changed a lot.
if you're going to Amsterdam or I don't know any other city or a city in Germany, you probably take a car. But then going to Paris, you don't take a car anymore, but because train is like more efficient, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, and
But it's an
mhm,
interesting point that you just made. The transport behavior change is a very hard thing to create, to provoke. But as
yeah,
you said, you had a big change in your life. You moved and came to Brussels, and we really see that these are massive opportunities for behavioral change in terms of everyday mobility.
yeah,
Yeah. Actually, maybe I talk about one thing. Like we had
sure,
an awareness raising campaign called
okay,
Mobility Changers, that got rewarded yesterday at the time we speak during
okay,
this podcast recording. It got a Smart Mobility Award yesterday, and it's a Smart Mobility Award because we created behavior change with a training program. We had
mhm,
87 families that got a challenge for a month. With their agreement, with their consent, we took their car keys, and for
mhm,
one month, we told them, to these families, okay, use something else. You have a budget of 500 and 600 euros of using shared mobility, public transport. We lent you an e-bike, whether it's a
mhm,
cargo bike or something else, and the results are amazing. Like some families sold their cars after that challenge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's we're very proud of this project, and it shows that mobility as a service, like the MaaS that was promised 10 years ago, with
Hmm.
just the application that would change behavior. That's maybe a concept that is dead.
Yeah.
But MaaS as a like lifestyle, it remains possible, and behavior change can happen with the right training and the right campaigns
Absolutely.
such as this one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Behavior change is the biggest change that's going to happen in mobility if you look far into the future, right?
Absolutely.
Um, Coming back to the shared micromobility in Brussels, right? So going through having so many operators, nine operators, 30,000 plus vehicles, the last couple of years, right? It was a bit transformative because there was a tender process, number of operators were cut down. Um, can you tell us what that transformation was like? Why did you decide? Why did the city decide to move from anybody can operate to uh, putting some limits? What was that like, and why do you come up with a couple of things that was very fascinating? One is like number of operators, but then you also had a category for shared cargo bikes as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you tell us about the tender and why did you come up with all that?
Well, yeah, it was a very interesting, and I learned a lot during this process. But we work the government of the Brussels Capital Region. It's basically a democratic, sorry, a whole process to have an ordinance, a law that defines a regulatory framework for a service. So this is a very, very long process, and you have to have a lot of stakeholders involved from the public sector, from the private sector, not only transport services actually that have a right to say in this. So it starts with an idea and a political will from the government saying, okay, it's been chaos, to be honest. When we reached 30,000 vehicles, like sidewalks were
Yeah.
cluttered with vehicles. It was honestly and factually too much. So there was a will to be much stricter in terms of parking, in terms of an amount of licenses and number of vehicles allowed. So we started working on this, and as I said, like the process is so long. You have to ask for uh, opinions,
Hmm.
avis, we call it advice from many stakeholders. You have to integrate these opinions in like the final version of the regulatory framework.
Yeah.
Eventually, there was a will for more, type of vehicles, more types of services, and basically a little bit more bikes, like a better balance between scooters and bikes. And we wanted to leave room for new type of services, shared cargo bikes, and we also worked on a possible like pilot project kind of
Hmm.
license to allow for anything else that could arise in terms of service in new vehicles. So that's the whole process ended for the new regulatory framework ended in July 2023, and we had
Okay.
5 months to publish the tender and define like the new uh, landscape of shared micromobility. 3 licenses for bikes and 2 for scooters.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the cargo bike licenses and moped licenses didn't work out as well as scooters and bikes. And then so early 2024, the new landscape, and then we started to have many legal challenges from providers at different levels. Like at some
Yeah.
point, we had a legal challenge and landing on my desk every second day. It was a bit crazy,
Yeah.
um, and we first off we lost a few in the courts, but
Hmm.
since a few months that the momentum has changed, and we won on some different topics. And now, just a few weeks ago, we reached eventually the landscape that we designed in the 2023 reform of the regulatory framework. So we have 3 providers for e-bikes
Hmm.
and maximum 7,500 bikes.
Okay.
And we have 2 providers for scooters for maximum 8,000 scooters.
Hmm.
And we're there. The last one left with a massive amount of vehicles. And we have an opportunity now, which I told to the three remaining providers, we have to, take advantage of this opportunity and this momentum and work
Yeah.
together to give like the right image like shared micromobility deserves.
Hmm.
So like it's the ball is in their camp now to, have the best service possible
Hmm.
to have a better image.
So how many vehicles do we have right now?
So it's close to, if I'm not mistaken, 13,000, I would say.
Okay.
13, 14.
Okay. That's not including the Willow bikes. So if
That's
you
not
include,
including the wheel
okay.
bikes, indeed.
So if you
Uh,
include Willow bikes, maybe 20K or
a bit less, I believe. I think it's
okay.
around 18, something like that.
Okay. So if you look at shared micromobility devices per, I think, 1,000 inhabitants, it's still less compared to say other cities, right?
It depends on which one. I don't know the numbers exactly. I would have to double check that, but I believe Paris
Okay.
again has a lot more,
Yeah.
indeed.
I
But
I have a report in front of me from I think this is from Police Network or one of the mobility organizations. So Paris is at 8.5. So this is shared bikes, not shared e-scooters, but then
okay,
shared bicycles. 8.5. Antwerp 10.2 per 1,000 inhabitants. London is at 3.6, and Brussels capital region is at 6.1.
okay.
So yeah, so it's less than Paris, less than Antwerp in terms of bikes. I don't know how it is in terms of shared scooters, right?
I would believe that in terms of just bikes, we're probably lagging a bit behind. But
Okay,
overall, if you consider all type of vehicles, I think we're
got it.
okay, like on the podium, maybe somewhere like that.
The tender, that's for 3 years, right?
That's for
Or
3 years,
three
indeed.
years.
Yeah.
Do you think 3 years is the right time frame for such tenders, or should it be like much longer? Because I strongly believe that it has to be like much longer,
Hmm.
so that for operators they can actually create jobs locally, set up a very solid base. Why did you limit it to 3 years? Do you think 3 years is the right time frame, or should it be longer?
Well, if I have to say that I would be speaking for myself here, not necessarily
Yeah.
from a Brussels Mobility's perspective,
Yeah.
but with a bit more perspective, I would say a longer permit would be relevant,
Mm.
specifically when you have that many, possible legal challenges happening. If we have to do this every 3 years,
Yeah.
it's gonna be hell,
Yeah.
to be honest. But as you said, like in terms of from the business perspective, it's better to have a longer perspective indeed, and a longer time
Mhm.
frame for them to invest into to hire people,
Yeah.
etc., etc. But you have to understand that from our perspective, you have a regulatory framework, a
Yeah.
regulatory toolbox. You have different kind of tools and regulatory framework to be used and to be relevant depending on what kind of service you want to provide.
Mhm.
We still have Villo station based, which is a public service
Yeah.
and a concession tender kind of process that started in 2008 for a 15-year long contract. And you have to take that into account when it comes to pure private
Yeah.
players and free floating kind of approach for shared micromobility. We couldn't set rules that were too close to Villo.
Mhm.
The longer time frame you're talking about, the closer you get to Villo, and then kind of it's not appropriate kind of approach.
Yeah.
So I guess probably a bit longer would be relevant, but not much longer than 3 years.
Okay, but do you I mean, this again, you from your personal perspective, say 7 to 10 years is probably the right time frame for.
Well, not with this free floating permit kind of approach. It is
Okay.
relevant. 10 years is the recommendation that we have for
Yeah.
the next evolution of station based
Okay.
bike sharing scheme.
Hmm.
15 years and more actually for the first concession was too long because in
Yeah.
the end,
Yeah. Yeah.
like the service doesn't evolve. There's no
Hmm.
uh, relevant evolution of the service, and it's hard to stay with that. Ten
Okay.
years would be the right balance, and around 4 years, I would say, for the permits and for pure private players.
Got it. On that topic, so if you look at the Villo bikes, the utilization is very low. I think last time I checked, it was like zero point 0.6, zero point
Mm.
0.7 trips. If you look at shared e-bikes, I'm not even looking at scooters. Shared e-bikes in the city, I think the utilization is much higher than that, right? Um, don't you? First question is like, do you know what the reasons are behind this? Given the fact that Willow is actually very cheap, right? So from a cost point of view, you would expect that everybody would use that rather than the free floating bikes, right? The first question is like, why do you think the utilization of Willow bikes are low compared to the shared e-bikes? I'll come to this. Come back to the second question.
Okay. Okay. Well, Villo started in 2008. It was a concession tender process for 15 years. There was one extension for another 3 years, and we're reaching the end of the contract next year, actually, end of 2026.
Yep.
At the time, like, it was a whole different world, basically,
Yeah.
when in terms of when it comes to models of shared mobility and shared bikes. So we were inspired by cities like Lyon and Paris, I believe, in 2007 that started this kind of tendering process and concessions
Hmm.
tenders. Um, and in 2008, it was the kind of players that invested in this and bid on the tender was the JC Deco or the Clear Channel, and the business model was based on selling ads and
Yeah.
not selling trips with their bikes. That was more than 15 years ago, and the model remains the same. Like, they're not incentivized to sell trips to users. So the service, in terms of innovation, in terms of quality, is much lower than these new players.
Hmm.
Um, and that's the reason. I think that's the main reason why now Vilo is a much lower utilization rate.
Hmm.
Plus, the bikes. Let's be honest, the bikes are quite heavy compared
Yeah.
to these new e-bikes. The like electric assistance is possible at Vilo, but we have to bring your own battery. That changed in 2018, 2019, if I remember
I don't
correctly.
think anybody's doing that anymore.
And like we actually don't have the data. We know which bike
Yeah.
are electrifiable
Yeah.
and how they're used, but we don't know if they're used with the battery.
Yeah, I had a friend who bought one of those batteries, was very excited for a week, and then gave up because it's like it's a heavy battery that you have to carry around,
Yeah.
wherever you go. Right? Doesn't make any sense at all. And I don't know. I mean, I would love to see the data, but I would believe that not a lot of people are using it.
No, no, we
Right?
don't think so. It was at least we tried.
Yeah. Um, so on the same topic, so we know that willow bikes are useless. I mean, I used less. I'm not saying
Mhm.
useless, but they used less. Uh, it is a bit contradictory to what's happening in Paris, where Velo bikes are used a lot. If you go to London, station-based bikes are used a lot. I still couldn't figure out why. I don't have one solid. I mean, we know that the bikes are, yeah. I mean, it's heavy and all that, but still, from a from a cost point of view, it's still very very cheap, right?
Yeah.
And but still, we don't see a lot of usage, and I don't know why, right? But given the fact that you know Willow probably is not working to the extent that we need. Shared bikes are working really well in terms of utilization. You also spoke about having shared micromobility maybe for a longer period. Do you think at some point this free floating bikes or scooters will become part of similar to Willow bikes? It's part of a tender where part of the cost is like taken by the city. Do you think there'd be much more collaboration rather than saying, "Hey, I mean, e-scooters 3 years or 5 years renewable tender, whatever cost that is, pass it on to users. Yes, it's going to be a expensive system, but then partly we'll have a station-based system which is going to be cheaper." Do you think that's going to change?
That's a really tricky question. It's hard to answer that right now. At least since we reached the end of the contract with JC Deco and for the Vilo
Yeah.
service, we worked like we published a very like important study on what the future of station based bike sharing scheme should be. It's available on our website. It
Uh-huh.
got quite a lot of a good reception in terms of how expensive the study was. There was a benchmark like all around Europe at least, and some benchmark of other cities in the world. And we have like recommendation of what the best service should be in terms of bike
Mhm.
sharing in Brussels. But this requires one, a budget, and we're in a budget crisis, and
Yeah.
second, political decision, and we are in a political crisis right now. We still don't have an acting government a year and a half after the
Mhm.
elections. So we're in a tricky position, and we raise awareness in terms of okay, what the future of this service should be
Yeah.
when we have decisions to make on whether it's free floating or bike sharing, like station based or a
Mhm.
mix of both, etc. We have to make a choice because both are connected, and we have to have a strategic vision.
Yeah.
But in the current process, it's hard to go forward. So we're you know uh, acting cautiously on
Mhm.
both sides. We're advancing with what we can do, but at some point, there's going to be a decision. And which is the best, option? I don't
Mhm.
know. Um, I think.
just to just to give you a bit more perspectives there. So free floating is working, right?
Mhm,
So the bikes are working, e-scooters are working, and we know that station based system is not working, right? And like I said, we can have reasons saying that that maybe the bike is not great and all that, but then how sure are we that if we have another station based system, I don't know, starting next couple of years, maybe better bikes, we are not sure that it'll work, right? But what we know is that the shared bikes are working, shared e-scooters are working, right? And also on the point of free floating versus share versus station based, I was talking to Christian Brink. Probably you know him from Urban Sharing. He's
okay.
a bike share OG. So we were talking about Brussels case in specific, and
Okay.
the line between station based and free floating, it's blurring. Given the fact that if you look at Brussels, a couple of years ago, yeah, free floating, I get it because you can leave the bikes and scooters anywhere you want, but
Mhm.
now there are parking bays, right? What are those parking bays? They are virtual stations, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
in a sense, the entire service across Brussels has become station based in a way, right? Just that it's not like locked to a pole; it is kind of confined to a virtual, station, right? So from those perspectives, don't you think it makes much more sense to go full on with a you know a dockless model, like Dot or Voy and all these guys, rather than having another really capital intensive station based system, right? Where you know I think that I don't know if the numbers are public, but then the city is like spending quite a bit of money every year for those station based systems, right?
No, actually, so as I said, the business model is selling ads for a video. So there's not like actual euro spent from
Yeah.
the administration towards this service, but this represents a big market. Selling ads is still a big
Yeah.
market, and in terms of time and resources, there we invest in this service specifically for permits in urbanism permits that each of these ads require. That's quite a lot of time, so that
Hmm.
costs indeed the public and for the public administration. But
Hmm.
I don't think like it's really not easy to answer. I think both
Hmm.
services have their advantages. Indeed, right now we see utilization rate for shared micromobility like free floating. They're much higher. So indeed,
Yeah.
these bikes and the electric bike is a no-brainer. If we have to evolve Villo, it has to be 100% electric, and this is one of the recommendations that we had in our own study. Um, but you have to understand like the drop zones or the parking corrals that we have from a non-user perspective, and
Hmm.
I've to speak with a lot of non-users as well.
Yeah.
Like every bike, every scooter that is in the middle of sidewalk, outside
Hmm.
of a parking corral, is is like a huge problem.
Yeah.
So as long as you have that, it's going to be hard to defend like the pure free floating, quote unquote,
True.
kind of approach.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for providers to understand that as long
Hmm.
as it's not close to perfect, it's going to be hard to defend this service. And right
Yeah.
now, we're almost at a survival kind of time for the service,
Hmm.
reaching
Hmm.
the end of 2026. Honestly, there's a risk that all of the services, like shared micromobility in general, all services included, is at
Hmm.
risk if we don't raise up
Yeah.
the bar.
Yeah, but we cannot blame the operators completely, right? I mean, I know that we have so many such virtual parking bays coming up. That's a massive progress, but then I think it is not sufficient. I think we had this conversation as well at one point. I think every street, it's wise to have at least one such parking bay in every street, right? Rather than having, I don't know if you know this, right next to Rue de Commerce. So
Yeah.
there's a metro station called Tron, right? And there's one massive parking bay completely filled with bikes, scooters, and all that, right? It's always overflowing, right? But if you walk to the streets nearby, there's no parking bay at all, right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
I totally understand, but it's again in Brussels we have the region, we have the 19 municipalities, so that 19 stakeholders you have to convince,
yeah,
and most of the time, decision makers, policy makers are non-users.
yeah,
So it takes a lot of time and energy to make them understand the added value of this,
yeah,
and okay, it could be better. We could have
mhm,
more parking bays, but a couple of years ago, basically, we went from zero parking corrals to more than 2,000 in 1 year
yeah,
with this kind of innovative approach in terms of governance and low cost, kind of low tech also way to materialize these drop zones. So, of course, there could be more.
yeah,
But it takes time when we have to convince these kind of stakeholders at political level and administration level in
yeah.
these 19 municipalities. Also internally, I mean, people are everyone is not convinced of the added value of the service, basically,
Mhm, mhm.
and that's important to understand and to realize. And it's okay. I
Got it.
mean, it
Yeah.
should be a debate.
Absolutely, absolutely. One more question on the a similar topic. Um, so, if you look at shared micromobility and the users, it captured, you know the numbers, with thousands of users every city, right? We're talking to operators. I think something that's very clear is that the next big unlock will come when the prices are lowered, right? So if you take cities like Brussels or even Paris, if you rely on shared e-scooters or bikes, and if you don't have the traditional pass that they offer, it is still an expensive service, right? It's not for everybody. I mean, even if you take an average salary in Brussels, it's not for somebody. It's not for everybody, right? Nobody can
Absolutely.
take
Yeah.
the service twice a day, right? For a month. Considering that, do you think there will be a point where cities in general will subsidize these rides? Do you see that happening? I'm not asking from Brussels City's point of view, but generally, do you see this as a trend going into the future?
Unfortunately not. I see
No.
on like
Okay.
on LinkedIn, etc.,
Yeah.
that there's a trend from providers to trying to have a business model which
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
But from a realistic point of view, from city's perspective, I don't see that happening. But as you said, it's important to have a service that's attainable for most citizens,
Mhm.
and that's why we have Villo and in this type of service.
Yeah.
This is not subsidized in terms of we're spending money,
Mhm.
but we believe there's a relevance for that type of service being provided, such as public transport, like a public transport option, a fourth mode of transport after
Yeah.
metro, tram, and bus, where we have a shared bike system. And that's why it's important. Like there's a market and there are users for more private, pure private players, but there's another market for this type of services. That's why we still believe in both.
Mhm.
Both can cohabit and have different markets, different users, and that's very fine. So that's what we're aiming for,
Okay.
and hopefully we'll reach the
S-
goal.
So this is not a trend that's going to happen anytime soon across the world, right?
I I really don't think so. I
Okay.
don't see that happening. I mean, given the climate and the way the debate is happening,
Yeah.
like it goes actually the other way. Sorry, the other way around.
Yeah.
We see much more demand for higher taxes and higher fees for these providers. So
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
like not like the opposite direction of subsidizing. So that's
Yeah.
why I don't see it happening right now.
Do,
Not
do,
any.
do, do do you think at least the VAT can be reduced? Because I think it's still like taxed at 21%, right? The VAT for shared
So,
micromobility.
sorry, can you say that again?
The
Didn't
the
hear you.
VAT. the value
Yeah.
added tax. I think
Yeah.
it's at the highest rate right now, 21%, right? So
Yeah.
don't you think that can be reduced, or is it a conversation that's happening?
Well, that's a conversation that's happening. It's one of the recommendations. Unfortunately, it's one of the,
Yeah,
the competence that's happening at the federal level and not at the regional. So we
yeah,
cannot we cannot act on that. But indeed, it's not at all a level playing field between the different transport services. Some have
yeah,
6%, others have 21, such as shared mobility, which is really unfair.
yeah.
But that's a decision to be made at the federal level. So we're lobbying
Yeah.
in that direction.
Good. On staying on the price topic, something that a very recent evolution within Brussels is a commune called Etterbeek in Brussels is proposing to add an extra fee
Yes.
on shared micromobility. Can you explain to the audience what the proposal is right now for that?
Yeah, what it came as a big surprise for all of us,
Yeah.
providers or public sector at the regional level. So basically, Etterbeek, which is a liberal-led municipality, by the way, which is interesting between brackets, is proposing an additional tax to shared micromobility providers, basically saying there's a forfeit of €1,000 per year and then €20 per vehicle on the territory of the municipality,
Wow.
which how do you
Yeah.
count that? I don't know. And then an additional €30 per thousand trips being started or ending in the municipality. So
Yeah.
that's one municipality. But if other municipalities start following suit, then it's going to be a complete mess
Yeah.
to try to calculate that. So it's a proposal for 2026. So we have
Mhm.
still a few months to check the legality of this initiative
Yeah.
and what we can do to go back towards, because there's already a fee at the regional level that
Yeah.
is distributed to the municipalities afterwards. So it's a process
Yeah.
that
This is on top, right? This is on
this is
top.
on top, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the effect, from what I hear from providers, might be additional cost to the user,
Yeah. Yeah.
likely, or even like stopping the service in the municipality
Yeah.
itself, which is
And
a shame for the citizens.
yeah, but given the fact that there's a fee if for trips starting from Etterbeek and also ending. So starting, I understand it's so easy to figure out, whether it's starting from Etterbeek, but for ending, it's very difficult. I mean, you can start from I don't know, some other commune. You never know if the trip is going to end in Etterbeek, so it's very difficult for operators to price it higher or lower. I mean, it's so confusing, right? So
Absolutely.
operators
So
will have to invest into building tech just to manage that, right? For I don't know how much of trips that's happening. And I mean, exactly, I'm with you that all the fee will be directly passed on to users. So it's similar to tariffs. It's not the operators that's going to pay. It's going to be the users. I mean, residents of Etterbeek are going to bear it, right?
yeah, yeah, but the image in the perception from leaders, at the municipality level, is that these private providers, are flood with cash, and then huge international players,
Yeah,
swimming in dollars and stuff like that. So that's
yeah,
really, I'm not kidding. That's a perception that they have, even though
yeah,
the shared mobility business and model is not very clear yet. It's still
yeah.
very very tricky to make money in this business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I follow financials of all the companies, and we write a lot about them.
Hmm.
Last couple of years, if you take the 2018-19 timeframe, yes, all these companies had a lot of cash, right? I mean, Bird went on to raise 1.5 billion, Lime almost a similar amount here. Everybody raised a lot of cash. But the last couple of years, it's not the story is very different, right? Raising VC cash is not easy, right? The only
Absolutely.
way you can raise funds is showing that you have a solid business, right, with proper unit economics, and then you raise debt. That's what is happening, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not true at all that all these companies are swimming in cash. But what I know is that at least the founders, CEOs that I'm in touch with, they're all like super invested in this cause. They could easily just say, hey, I mean, I'm gonna move on and start another VC funded company. But they're all building in the space because they are as passionate as you are in micromobility, right? As all of us are, right? So it's a
Yeah, I
very different story.
absolutely.
And yeah, it's a very different story. And cities should actually understand that as well. right?
But the image from 2018, 2019,
It
as you
still
said,
stays, right?
it stay.
Yeah,
Yes, it's hard to get that back. It's really
yeah,
really hard.
exactly. Um, if you have to paint a picture for Brussels shared micromobility, looking into the future, say 5 years into the future, let's say 2030, how do you see the landscape evolving?
That's a bad timing for asking that question. There's so
you,
much
you you
uncertainty.
you can give your personal perspective about how you would like shared micromobility landscape to be by 2030.
Well, from the numbers that I've seen in the past year or so, or 2 years, I see how critical the service is. Like,
Yeah.
I like to talk now about mathematical combination.
Mm.
Like the more parameters you have, the more combinations, the higher kind of amount you can do, and that's we talked about freedom earlier.
Yeah.
That's the best freedom you can have. You can combine a lot of trips that you couldn't if you didn't have that kind of service before. So my perspective is that in 2030 we have, like, it's not a question anymore. It's not a debate anymore of whether we should have shared micromobility or not. It's part of the landscape. The thing is that you know there's a lot of contradiction in the debate discussions on that topic, and I'm
Yeah.
really like focusing hard on that right now to save to make sure that the service remains. But it's really really tricky. I mean,
Mhm.
the next year or two will be critical to define the
Yeah.
landscape of 2030, of course.
Got it. It's always fascinating talking to you, Martin.
No,
All my conversations, it's been great the last years, and
same with you. Thank you so much.
it was an amazing conversation. I hope we can do this again because I have a lot of other topics to cover. So we definitely should do this again. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and thank you so much for everything that you're doing for mobility in general in Brussels.
Thank you so much, Pravin. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. And yeah, let's speak again soon.
Absolutely.